She only wanted to admire the diamond necklace for her birthday, but one cruel accusation turned her world upside down. Called a thief, humiliated in public, and judged for her simple life, she didn't fight back. But what happened next shocked everyone. A moment of shame led to a life of purpose, and a powerful rise the world would never forget. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a story filled with strength, forgiveness, transformation, and love. Hello family, welcome to STORYTIMEBYUCHELEE. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel, like, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Emily Carter lived a quiet life in a small town just outside Atlanta, Georgia. She was a simple woman with a warm smile, gentle hands, and a heart full of love. Though she was married to Brandon Carter, a man known across America as one of the richest businessmen, Emily never let wealth change who she was. She still preferred to cook her family's meals herself, clean their home, and visit the market down the street. She never wore expensive clothes. In fact, she often bought her dresses from local shops and wore the same comfortable shoes she had owned for years. To many who passed her on the street, she looked just like any ordinary woman. And that was exactly how she liked it. One sunny afternoon, Emily was on her way to the local store to buy ingredients for lunch. It was her husband's favorite, grilled chicken with mashed potatoes and steamed carrots. She smiled to herself as she walked, enjoying the fresh air and the soft breeze on her face. As she passed by Evergold Jewels, one of the biggest and most expensive jewelry stores in the city, something in the display window caught her eye. A diamond necklace. It was breathtaking. It sparkled like sunlight on water, clear, delicate, and beautiful. Emily stood there for a moment, just admiring it. Her birthday was only a few days away, and although she didn't need anything special, her heart quietly whispered, "It's so beautiful." "I wonder how much it costs," she thought, placing her hand gently on the glass as she smiled. Out of curiosity, and with no plans to buy anything, she decided to go inside and ask. The store was quiet, cold, and filled with glass cases of shining stones and gold chains. Everything looked expensive. Emily walked in slowly, careful not to touch anything, her eyes still on the necklace that had drawn her in. But the moment she stepped in, one of the staff members, a young woman in a sharp black suit, glanced at her from head to toe. The woman's eyes narrowed. She whispered something to a colleague, who smirked. Emily didn't notice at first. She simply walked over to the glass case where the necklace lay and smiled politely. "Hello," she said softly. "I just wanted to ask about this piece. It's really lovely." The staff woman rolled her eyes. Her voice was cold and full of judgment. "That necklace is not for people like you. It costs over $10 million. Do you even know what real diamonds feel like?" Emily blinked, unsure of what she had just heard. Still, she kept calm and said, "Oh, I wasn't planning to buy it. I was just admiring it. It caught my eye." The woman scoffed loudly. "That's what people like you always say. You come in here asking for prices and use the chance to steal something." The words hit Emily like a slap. Other customers turned to look. "She looks like one of those street women who try to act rich," another staff member whispered. Emily stood frozen, her face pale, her heart pounding in her chest. Never in her life had she been called a thief. Never had someone treated her so cruelly. But she didn't scream. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply straightened her back, lifted her chin, and whispered, "I am not a thief." Just as she turned to leave, the glass door swung open. A man in a tailored suit, tall, confident, and commanding, stepped inside. It was Brandon Carter, the billionaire, the husband she adored. He had come into the store that day to buy his wife a gift for her birthday. He had no idea she would be there. But the moment he saw her standing by the display case, looking hurt and embarrassed, he stopped. And when he heard the staff insult her again, his face changed. "What did you just say to my wife?" Brandon asked in a calm but dangerous voice. The staff woman froze. Her eyes widened in shock. "Wife," she stammered. Brandon walked up to the display and looked at the necklace, the same one his wife had admired. Without blinking, he turned to the manager and said, "I'll take it. Wrap it up. I'm paying in cash." The room went silent. The staff woman's mouth fell open. The manager came rushing out from the back, stuttering apologies. "Mr. Carter, we didn't know. If we had known—" Brandon raised his hand. "You didn't need to know. You should treat everyone with respect." He looked at Emily, whose eyes were filled with tears. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded gently. "Let's go," he said, wrapping an arm around her. As they walked out, he turned once more and added, "And by the way, you can consider that woman fired." That night, the story spread like wildfire. Not because of the price of the necklace, but because of the way Emily, a humble woman, stayed calm in the face of public humiliation, and because of how her husband stood up for her, without pride, but with love. But what happened next would change not just Emily's life, but the lives of thousands across the country. That evening, Emily sat on the balcony of their quiet home, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The sky was turning orange, and birds were flying home. But her heart was still heavy from what happened at the jewelry store. She stared out into the trees, deep in thought. Not because of the necklace or even the insult, but because she couldn't stop thinking of how many people were treated badly every day, just because of how they looked or how simple their lives were. Brandon walked out and sat beside her. He placed a soft blanket over her lap and looked at her face. "You haven't said much since we got home," he said gently. Emily sighed. "I'm just thinking, what if I wasn't your wife, Brandon? What if I was just another simple woman who didn't have anyone to defend her?" He stayed quiet. She continued, "That woman didn't look at my heart. She looked at my clothes. She looked at my shoes. And in just a second, she decided I wasn't worthy of respect. That I was a thief." Brandon nodded slowly. "It's sad, but it's true. Many people judge others by appearance, not character." Emily looked at him with quiet fire in her eyes. "I want to do something. Not just for me, but for the thousands of people who go through this every day and have no one to speak up for them." Brandon smiled gently. "What do you want to do?" Emily looked at the sky and said, "I want to create something. A program. A platform. Something that gives a voice to the poor, the humble, the everyday people who are being mistreated just because they don't wear gold or drive fancy cars." She turned to him. "Will you help me?" Brandon didn't even hesitate. "Of course I will. Always." That very week, Emily started planning. She named the new program the Grace Initiative, a name chosen to remind people that grace isn't for the proud, but for the humble. The goal was simple: to train women, support the poor, and teach people, both rich and poor, that dignity is not about money. Emily started with small steps. She visited local markets and talked to women who sold vegetables and fruits. She sat with young girls who had dropped out of school because they were bullied for being poor. She gave out clothes, books, and food, but more than anything, she gave out hope. Everywhere she went, people were surprised. "Isn't that the billionaire's wife? She doesn't have bodyguards. She's hugging a homeless woman." But Emily didn't care about whispers. She cared about hearts. Soon, stories of her kindness started going viral. A video of her helping a woman sweep her tiny salon made the news. A picture of her kneeling to fix a schoolgirl's broken sandals was shared across the internet. People were touched. The nation was watching. One evening, as she returned from a long day visiting women's shelters, Brandon met her at the door with a proud smile. "You're changing lives, Emily," he said, holding her hand. Emily shook her head. "No. I'm just reminding people that every life matters." Then came the surprise. Local newspapers began writing about her work. News channels invited her to talk. Even politicians started paying attention. But Emily refused to let it distract her. One day, she received a letter from the same jewelry store where she had been insulted. It was from the manager. It read, "Dear Mrs. Carter, we want to deeply apologize for what happened at our store. The staff involved has been dismissed, and we are making serious changes in how we treat all our customers. Your strength and grace that day taught us a lesson we will never forget. Respectfully, Mr. Charles Henry, store manager." Emily folded the letter and smiled. "It worked," she whispered. But the real moment came one morning when a young girl, dressed in old clothes, ran up to Emily in the street. "Ma'am, thank you," the girl said, her eyes filled with tears. "Because of your program, I learned how to sew. I got a job. I can now feed my brothers." Emily hugged her tightly. And in that moment, she knew this was just the beginning. The humiliation that once broke her heart had now become the foundation for healing others. And her quiet storm of change was just getting started. The hug from the young girl on the street stayed with Emily for days. She had seen many people smile since she began her charity work, but this girl's eyes, full of hope, full of pride, meant something different. It reminded Emily why she had started it all. Not for fame, not for praise, but for change. Emily sat at her desk that night with her notebook open. It was filled with handwritten plans and goals for the Grace Initiative. She wrote down one sentence at the top of a fresh page. This must grow. She wanted to reach more women, more homes, more forgotten corners of America. So she and Brandon sat down and made a bigger plan. They called in volunteers, created local teams, and opened new centers across the state where poor women could learn skills like baking, sewing, typing, and customer service. Others were trained to become small business owners. Brandon provided the funds. Emily gave the vision. Within months, the program reached 5 states. Everywhere the organization opened, lives changed. Single mothers got jobs. Girls went back to school. Elderly women received care. And most importantly, people began to believe in themselves again. But the change wasn't only on the streets. It reached the hearts of people in power. One morning, Emily received a letter stamped with the U.S. presidential seal. Her hands shook slightly as she opened it. Inside, the letter read, "Dear Mrs. Emily Carter, your program, the Grace Initiative, has touched countless lives across the country. Your story has become a symbol of hope and courage. The Office of the President would like to invite you to the National Humanitarian Awards next month to honor your work. Warm regards, Office of the President of the United States." Emily held the letter to her chest and blinked back tears. She wasn't trying to be famous. She just wanted to be useful. On the day of the award ceremony, the hall was filled with hundreds of people. Some were dressed in elegant gowns, others in suits. But scattered through the crowd were simple women, those who once had nothing, now standing tall because of her. Emily wore a modest blue dress and her old worn-out shoes. As she stepped onto the stage, the room stood and clapped. Not because of her last name, not because of her wealth, but because of her heart. A woman from Texas walked up to the microphone to speak. Her voice trembled as she shared, "I used to sleep in my car with my 2 kids. One day, I saw a video of Mrs. Carter helping a young girl in the rain. That video gave me the courage to walk into one of her centers. Today, I run a small cafe, and my kids are back in school. She changed my life." The room filled with sniffles. Another woman shared how she was trained through the Grace Initiative and opened a shop where she now trains other women. Then a soft voice asked for the microphone. Everyone turned. It was the woman from the jewelry store, the staff member who once insulted Emily. She looked nervous as she stood up, her hands shaking. "I didn't know she was married to a billionaire," the woman said, her eyes wet with regret. "But that's no excuse. The way I treated her was wrong. I judged her for her clothes, not her soul. I lost my job because of it. I was angry at first, but that day changed my life." She turned to Emily. "I'm here to say, I'm sorry. Truly sorry." The hall was quiet. Emily stood up slowly, walked to the woman, and took her hand. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said gently. "And I'm glad you found the courage to come here today. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after." The crowd stood to their feet again. They didn't just clap, they cried. Because in that moment, they didn't see a billionaire's wife. They saw a woman who had turned pain into purpose. The standing ovation still echoed in Emily's ears long after the award ceremony ended. That night, as she sat beside Brandon in their quiet living room, she felt something deeper than pride. She felt purpose. Brandon looked at her with admiration. "You were amazing up there," he said softly, his hand resting on hers. Emily smiled. "I didn't do it alone. You stood by me when no one else understood what I was trying to build." He shook his head. "All I did was believe in you. You're the one who gave the world something to believe in." From that moment, Emily knew she couldn't slow down. The ceremony wasn't the end. It was just a door opening into something greater. Over the next few months, the Grace Initiative spread faster than anyone had imagined. It wasn't just helping women anymore. It was shaping schools, touching communities, and changing how society treated the poor. Emily added new sections to the program: free legal help for women facing unfair treatment, skill centers in rural areas, and evening classes for teenage girls who worked during the day. People across America began to speak up. "She helped my mother open her own store. She paid my school fees without even knowing my name. She gave me a job when no one else would." Her name became a symbol of kindness. Yet, with all the praise, Emily stayed humble. She still wore her simple clothes. She still visited poor neighborhoods in person. She still cooked dinner at home when she could. She reminded everyone that being important didn't mean being unreachable. One cold morning in December, Emily received an unexpected call from Washington, D.C. A voice from the presidential office said, "Mrs. Carter, your program has not only changed lives, it has changed the nation. We would like to offer you a position as the National Advisor for Social Welfare and Empowerment." Emily was silent for a moment. I'm honored," she finally said. "It's not just an honor," the voice replied. "It's deserved." When she told Brandon, he stood up and hugged her tightly. "You said you just wanted to help a few people," he whispered. "Now look at you." Emily laughed softly. "I still do. Only now, I get to help even more." News of her appointment spread fast. People all over the country celebrated the woman who once lived a quiet, simple life, now chosen to stand beside the nation's leaders. On the day of her inauguration, the streets of Washington, D.C. were filled with people from every corner of America. Some wore suits. Some wore second-hand jackets. Some came in wheelchairs. Others held posters that read, "You gave us hope. From the streets to the stars. Our voice, our grace." As Emily walked onto the stage, her eyes welled with tears. Not because of the cameras. Not because of the flashing lights. But because of the faces, those faces she once sat with, cried with, prayed with. Now they were here, watching her rise with dignity. One by one, people were invited to share how the Grace Initiative had touched them. A boy said he had learned to read through the program. A single mother said she now owned a bakery. An old man with trembling hands said, "She reminded me I still had worth." Then came the most emotional moment. A young woman stood up and said, "I once thought my life was over. But because of Mrs. Carter, I found a place where I could start again. She saw me, not my past, not my pain, but my potential." Emily couldn't hold her tears anymore. She walked up to the microphone and said, "I'm not here today because I'm special. I'm here because I believe everyone is. We must stop judging people by how they look and start seeing them for who they are inside." She looked at the crowd, her voice trembling but clear. "If we can do that, just that, then this world will be a better place." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was thunderous. And as Brandon watched from the front row, his eyes filled with quiet joy. Because he knew, this was more than a ceremony. This was history. The applause still echoed in Emily's heart long after she stepped down from the stage. That moment, standing before thousands who believed in her, would stay with her forever. But when the cameras stopped flashing and the stage lights faded, Emily went back to what she always had been, a woman of purpose, not praise. Back at home that evening, she stood by the kitchen window, staring into the quiet garden behind their house. The same house she had moved into years ago when Brandon married her. The same garden where she once knelt and prayed for a chance to do something meaningful with her life. She heard Brandon walk in. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You were beautiful today," he whispered. Emily turned and looked into his eyes, her voice soft. "I don't feel beautiful. I just feel full. Full of everything we've walked through." He smiled gently. "You've carried pain with grace. And now the world sees it too." They sat together on the couch as the fire crackled beside them. Brandon poured her a cup of tea, and for a while, they said nothing. They didn't need to. Silence, between two people who truly love each other, can feel like the deepest conversation. Emily broke the silence after a while. "Do you remember the day I was called a thief?" Brandon nodded slowly. "I remember every second of it. I didn't say anything that day," she continued. "I wanted to cry, scream, defend myself. But something in me knew, how I reacted would matter more than what they called me." "And it did," Brandon said. "Your silence became a seed. And now that seed has grown into a tree that's giving fruit to millions." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I never imagined this kind of life, Brandon. Not even in my wildest dreams." He took her hands in his and smiled. "I might be rich in money, Emily. But you are rich in what truly matters. Kindness, strength, mercy, purpose. You've changed me. You've changed the world." At that, Emily leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time. The next morning, Emily visited one of her centers in Baltimore. As she walked into the training hall, dozens of women ran up to greet her. Some cried. Others laughed. All of them carried stories of pain, of survival, of victory. A woman who once begged on the street now stood as a teacher. A teenage girl, once abandoned, now led a team of trainees. A woman in a wheelchair had just started her own online business through the skills she had learned. Emily sat among them, not as a leader, but as one of them. One of the girls turned to her and said, "You know what we call you here?" Emily smiled, curious. "What?" The girl whispered, "We call you Mama Grace. Because you didn't just give us help, you gave us back our dignity." Emily's eyes filled with tears again. That night, back at home, she found an envelope sitting on the kitchen table. It was a letter from the same jewelry store where everything had started. She opened it gently. "Dear Mrs. Carter, since that day, we've completely changed our staff training and company values. We are now supporting your charity through yearly donations. We also host a monthly seminar on judging people fairly, inspired by you. Please know, you didn't just change a store. You changed a system. With deepest respect, Claire Jewelry Management. Emily put the letter down, her heart full. She looked at the small necklace Brandon had gifted her on her birthday, the one that had started it all. It wasn't the most expensive thing she owned, but to her, it was the most meaningful. It was a reminder that sometimes, the worst moment of your life can lead to the greatest blessing. Months later, Emily was invited to speak at the United Nations. As she stood before leaders from all over the world, she spoke simply. "I was once called a thief, but I did not fight with anger. I chose to walk away with grace. And that grace became a light that showed others they are not forgotten." If we can treat every soul with kindness, rich or poor, we won't just change lives. We will save them. When she finished, there was silence. Then applause. Then tears. And somewhere in that room, in the middle of the crowd, Brandon stood quietly, watching the woman he once married in a small church in Ohio become a voice that reached the world. When Emily returned home that evening, Brandon welcomed her with a single rose and a handwritten note. It said, "To my wife, the richest woman I know, not in money, but in love, truth, and honor. I thank God every day that you walked into that jewelry store, because the world saw a thief, but I saw my queen." Emily held the note to her chest, tears falling down her cheeks. She had been called many names in her life, but the one that mattered most, blessed. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, kindly subscribe to my channel for more videos. Like and comment what you feel about the story in the comments below. Share to your friends and family. Thanks for watching.